These two Melmoth brothers don't get an opportunity to catch up as much as they'd like to these days, but the opportunity to go one-on-one before tomorrow night's clash was too good to pass up. Ben, the taller one, is now based in Auckland with the Breakers, while brother Adam has stayed in Newcastle, given a chance with the Pirates.
Last time we played against each other was probably in the backyard somewhere, and knocking each other down on the concrete and talking all kinds of smack. So it's going to be fun, and I've been looking forward to it for a long time, and I'm looking forward to get out there and getting a win.
The December 5th match has been circled on family and friends' calendars for months, their loyalties divided. And while the family really can't lose, Adam's tipping it won't be the home team.
All the boys think this is definitely one that's gettable.
The Pirates will be treating the match in many ways as a new beginning, an opportunity to score their first win for a new coach, which Ben thinks will make the Pirates dangerous.
We're two new clubs struggling to try and establish ourselves in the league, and it's just going to be a matter of who can make the most learning experience out of the time they've got. And having a new coach come in is going to have a little bit of disruption, but at the same time they're going to want to try and come out of the blocks early and get a win for the coach for his first game.
Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
A dispute over pay for an impending move to single-driver operations of Hunter coal trains has prompted crews to strike for 2 days. Pacific National has been paying a single-driver allowance while it awaits state government approval for the historic change. But the company wants to deny the Hunter workers a pay increase next July because it claims while the crews have been paid the allowance, they haven't been doing the work, a suggestion rejected by the rail union.
We would dispute that. They are carrying out driver only. There are areas where there isn't driver only, and that's a fight between the New South Wales government and regulators and Pacific National or operators.
Train crews will decide their next move when they meet tomorrow afternoon at Club Panthers Newcastle. Coal producers are hoping for a quick end to the dispute, with a rising Australian dollar adding to factors now eating into profits. And with 30 ships waiting to load coal, Port Waratah Coal Services has described the strike as regrettable. It's made worse because weekends are the time the Newcastle coal loaders receive their best deliveries of the week. Gary Blair, NBN News.
The ferocity of the storm is clear to see. Huge trees upturned, branches torn off and roofs lifted off. But strangely enough, houses just metres away were untouched, the storm raging in just a thin strip along the lake.
Well, it didn't last very long, it only lasted about a minute, but it was, just as hard to describe. Just the power of it, and then you realise the roof is the front part of the house is coming off. And then you just worry about any damage to any individual.
Tiles ripped off this Dalkira Avenue house were embedded inches into the ground, displaying just how strong the wind was. SES crews from across the Hunter have been called in to help with the massive clean-up.
It's going to take us a long time tonight to get them all cleaned up and at least get the people dry, hopefully.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Chainsaws interrupted the usual peace of Lakeside Dalkira Avenue this morning as SES workers continued to clean up. This house lucky to escape with just a cracked beam after a massive gum tree was uprooted. Council tree loppers also swung into action, clearing tons of dangerous branches and foliage destined for the mulcher. This is the storm cell shot from Merewether as it passed over Newcastle and Lake Macquarie around 3:30. Such was the force of the wind, it tore the ceiling and roof off this house, throwing it nearly 30 metres into the driveway. Next door, another roof was ripped off, iron wrapping like tinsel around nearby trees. 40 SES volunteers worked throughout last night to secure homes, although this morning some were still open to the elements.
We're hoping that we don't get any rain. That's the last thing we need at this stage, because the tarpaulins don't hold up real well in rain, and we might get some water entry into the houses.
Blake Doyle, NBN News.
I wish I had another week, but unfortunately I don't. But I think given the amount of time we've had and the difficult situation, and we're as well prepared as we can be.
A crowd of around 200 people turned out for the rally. Organisers blamed the weather for the lack of people.
Well, it was a very, very rainy day yesterday, and I think a lot of people thought it's going to be a bit uncomfortable weather-wise. But the response is going to keep on going next year. I think in the local government elections we'll be campaigning hard to make sure that the rail issue for all the lower hunter councils is going to be the main issue.
Despite this, protesters were determined to get their message across. Rail services into the city must stay. Entertainer Sue Cruikshank lent her support to the cause, leading the demonstrators in a protest song. The demonstrators then took their protest to the streets, marching past the Newcastle railway station.
There is serious money now for new signalling equipment, for track upgrades, for bridge replacement and repair works.
The buying was fast and furious as farmers bought and sold off stock. Prices were up and the condition of cattle was better than expected.
Well, on the steers we've sold, I'd say your steer job would be at least $50 a year on what our last sale was. And we anticipate with all the cows and calves we've got down the bottom, and there's some magnificent cows and calves down there, they'll make a fair bit of money, I think.
Recent rain has not only put a green tinge on paddocks in the Upper Hunter, but has also attracted buyers from out of the region.
We've got buyers from away here operating today. A lot of the cattle, I feel sure a lot of the cattle, cows and calves will go back out the west. But we've had good relief rain here in the last week or 10 days, which has sparked the job up very, very strongly.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
It's the country's oldest toy run and undoubtedly one of the biggest. It was certainly a change of pace for these bikers, with some 5,000 making the crawl through Newcastle's western suburbs, delivering the goods quite literally.
We're doing something for our children of our community, of our area. It's that big now that we're sending toys out to other areas, so it's basically a huge success.
All toys are donated to the Salvation Army, who distribute the goods where most needed to make sure no child goes without.
There's a huge pile of toys there, and you're right, if it wasn't for people like the bikers and other groups too that donate so generously at Christmas time, there'd be nothing to give kids.
Toy donations can still be made at the Kmart Wishing Tree and branches of the Newcastle Permanent Building Society. Adam McIlrick, NBN News. With no other vehicles involved and relatively dry conditions at the time, police can't explain why the southbound late model Toyota wagon left the road and hit a tree, the impact killing the elderly driver instantly. A rescue crew was needed to release the man from the wreckage. It was one of two accidents they were called to on the same stretch of the highway. The other, which followed just minutes later, 5 kilometres away, completely blocked the road with all traffic diverted onto the Buckets Way. A man and a woman in their 30s were airlifted to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital in a serious condition after the car they were travelling in collided with an oncoming semi-trailer. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Good evening. It's been a pleasant day across the state. Early cloud burnt off to reveal some sparkling sunshine, with an even better day on the way tomorrow. First tonight, we're taking a look at the weather balloon, which is one of the tools that helps forecasters work out what's going on in the sky. It carries a small pack of electronic instruments that measure temperature, air pressure and humidity and transmits it all back to the ground. As it rises, it's tracked by a radar to work out wind direction and strength at different heights. About 30 kilometres above the ground, the balloon pops and the small transmitter falls back to Earth, and they have been known to land in backyards. They're released by the Weather Bureau 4 times a day right across Australia.
A very different picture will be painted here in a little over a week when the pristine beaches of Port Stephens become a tourist mecca. More than 5,000 cubic metres of sand is currently being moved from the southern end of the beach, reversing nature's handiwork.
The beach has been a problem now since about some fairly major storms back in Easter, where we lost quite a bit of sand.
Wind and currents have also made an unmistakable imprint. During high tide, some sections of the popular Family Beach virtually disappear, but it's hoped the $50,000 sand transfer project will change that.
The money that we're spending on Shoal Bay is seen as an investment for the community at large.
Access to the beach will be restored by December 19. And just around the corner, the first stage of the Nelson Bay Foreshore Master Plan is nearing completion. A refurbished visitor information centre will open to the public on Tuesday, along with a new amenities block. Port Stephens Council hopes the work will boost the already bustling tourist industry, which is worth an estimated $250 million annually. Colleen West, NBN News.
Employment is one of the major cornerstones of any functioning society, but far too often those unable to find work pay for the failures of government. But in Newcastle, all levels of government, as well as community and not-for-profit groups and academic researchers, will be represented at a conference looking at ways to fully utilise the labour market.
The whole gamut of employment policies are being discussed and entertained and hopefully developed.
The conference is being hosted by COFFEE, the University of Newcastle's Centre of Full Employment and Equity.
This is a great opportunity for all the different players in the area, academic, government, community, all who may have varying views, to come together, to listen to each other, work on plans together and try to translate that into something that will go back into policy.
Among the keynote speakers for the three-day conference are the Reverend Tim Costello and Professor Barry Bluestone from Northeastern University in America. This afternoon he gave an insight into how labour policy in the US differs from Australia.
The trend in policy is to replicate the sort of deregulated, making welfare difficult to stay on. And so the lessons from the US economy on how to get people to make the transition from welfare to work are very salutary for us.
It was a perfect day for the perfect entrance. The guided missile frigate Newcastle made its way past Nobby's Headland and what must now be a familiar and comforting symbol of the city for its crew. And if they needed reminding of where they were, they only had to look up. As the ship continued along the harbour, family and friends gathered to welcome loved ones home. When the Newcastle finally berthed, Captain Jerry Christian was first off to greet family. Not far behind was Petty Officer Gregory Lewis. He wasted no time getting acquainted with 3-month-old Jaden.
Contact via emails, I guess, keeping in contact with Julie, making sure that I know how this little guy's progressing, and basically through that we've been able to stay sane and be ready for coming home.
It's been a long 5 months at sea, successfully patrolling the North Arabian Gulf as part of an international fleet, stopping oil being smuggled out of Iraq.
The oil that's being smuggled out of there is actually the lifeblood of the Iraqi economy, so if we can put a stop to that, and so we felt that we were doing something with purpose.
And there's much to celebrate for the HMAS Newcastle. 10 years ago tomorrow, the missile frigate was commissioned and its crew planned to execute their freedom of entry into the city and march down Hunter Street starting at Pacific Park from midday. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
It's It's a dream come true for the teenager. Since being diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, Emma hasn't had much time to go shopping. But today she got the opportunity to shop to her heart's content, thanks to the Starlight Foundation.
I didn't think I should be getting it because there's so many people off worse, but just overwhelmed, and it's just been great.
Starlight Ambassador Samantha Perkins, wife of swim star Kieran, was on hand to give some fashion tips. Meanwhile, the Hunter Ice Skating Stadium has been turned into the magical land of Oz for the Wizard on Ice show. 68 skaters are taking part in the pantomime. They had their final dress rehearsal today, with students from Eleebana Primary School getting a sneak preview. Performances are tonight and on Saturday.
For Newcastle-based performer Anne Hartsuka Akadi, singing with theatre legend Rob Guest is a dream come true.
Singing with the Phantom. It's a great opportunity, a great experience, and he's a wonderful man, performer.
Newcastle is the 15th stop on Guest's tour of regional New South Wales, inviting local singers to join him along the way.
We've been having a ball. We've been everywhere from Broken Hill to Lismore to Wagga to you name it, we've been there. It's been great.
Also part of tomorrow night's show at Newcastle's Civic Theatre is another local artist, Amanda Coombs.
While the controversy surrounding a public-private partnership shows no signs of going away, Hunter Health is moving ahead with its plans to ensure a new mental health facility is built. Under the plan, 10 additional beds will become available when services are relocated from the James Fletcher Hospital to the Mater.
It enables the services to be delivered better, so it's not a streamlining of services, it's just joining them together to make them better able to be delivered. You get better value for them.
As part of the plan, the private sector would fund, build and maintain the facilities, and the state government would pay it back over the next 25 years. All up, $132 million will be spent on the redevelopment of the Mater, the construction of a new mental health facility and expansion of cancer services. Meanwhile, the fight to retain maternity services at Belmont Hospital has stepped up a gear. The Maternity Coalition has developed a midwifery model which it will take to Hunter Health. It says babies can still be born at Belmont using midwives.
But this is a model predominantly for low-risk women, for women with healthy pregnancies, and the statistics show that when women actually have one-to-one midwifery care, they don't need the intervention at the rates that we're currently seeing.
Lyndall Derrig, NBN News.
Stepping into Joyce's home of 47 years is like visiting a Christmas wonderland where hundreds of dolls and decorations awaken the Christmas spirit.
She always gives me a good feeling, that angel. She's so pretty.
Joyce has been collecting and decorating her home for the past decade. The house is packed with elegant angels, a delightful doll's house, stacks of stylish Santas, and not to mention Joyce's 50 lace and foam knitted Christmas trees.
A knitted Christmas tree?
Yeah.
Who'd have thought?
It gives me something to think of through the year, what I'm planning to do, where I'll put things differently.
Several small Christmas villages boast everything from mini holiday resorts to piano, quilting and chocolate shops. And do all the figures come out to play when Joyce goes to bed each night?
They might, I don't know. They're not up when I get up through the night, so I don't know what they get up to.
The display is reserved for Joyce's family and friends who affectionately know her as Merry Christmas. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Considered the Sydney Kings' biggest threat for successive NBL crowns, Wollongong has been accused by its own coach of being complacent. Playing at home last night, the Hawks suffered a shock 7-point loss to Cairns, and everyone, especially the coach, can't wait for their next game to make amends.
It disappoints me that obviously that occurred, but it's a lesson for us. It can't happen again. I think Hunter, unfortunately, are going to get us probably in a tough situation.
It's little relief for the Pirates, who comped a Kings team last weekend that was looking to end a 2-game losing streak. But first up is Brisbane on Wednesday night, and the squad is unlikely to change much from that which played Sydney, with Michael Kingma showing no ill effects from a knee problem. However, question marks do remain over Matt Shanahan. Hitting the training court late today, it was the captain's first hit out since Friday's game, and he'll be assessed further at tomorrow's final session, with the team due to leave later in the day. Touching down after a disappointing exit from the Under-20s World Championship, Tom Willis couldn't have arrived at a better time for his club.
Exactly. Perfect timing, really.
The goalkeeper will be rushed back into the team after John Perosh was ruled out for at least a month with a knee injury. A specialist will define the full extent of damage on Thursday, but surgery is already a certainty. It's ankle trouble that continues to plague Joe Wheelhouse. Injuring his left before the World Cup, he damaged the right while he was there.
It's just one of those things.
get one injury and then you get another one and just can't win.
He'll have scans later in the week to assess the damage, but is hopeful of at least getting some time at the weekend. Contract negotiations also continue to weigh the talented 18-year-old down, but the young Socceroo believes a new deal isn't far off being reached for him to remain in Newcastle colours for another 2 years.
It's on the road, it's looking up. I haven't signed anything yet. Hopefully in the next few weeks I can put something on paper.
And former star striker Joel Griffiths joined his old teammates today at training. Now playing in Switzerland, Griffiths is home for a short Christmas break.
With the green light now given to build the $4.6 million facility, the next battle is money and where it's coming from.
The industry has what they call a Greyhound Industry Development Fund, from which funds may be used to assist in developing new projects, new capital projects like this.
But at what cost?
We don't open new tracks as such in the state, they normally close them, and so a lot of other criteria has to come in because it's a lot of money that we're looking at.
The NCA controls 5 venues including Tamworth, Wyong and Singleton, all of which are subject to an upcoming review by the New South Wales Greyhound Racing Organisation.
And just like the other codes, rationalisation will occur, and this week the first round of meetings will take place, from which clubs will be invited to show cause.
An outcome is expected by February, at which time work should begin on the gardens. The existing grass playing surface will be left intact, with a new track to be built around it. When complete, it will be an exact replica of Melbourne's Sandown facility, with the NCA planning to hold its maiden meeting on the 1st of September next year. Adam McIlrick, NBN News. Failing to finish on the podium at the recent World Championships in Canada was a bitter pill to swallow for the 30-year-old after a highly successful lead-up.
You learn from these things and it does make you hungrier.
This Hamilton back street isn't quite mountain country, nevertheless it's where the national champion is preparing to defend her most cherished title, and she's going to have to hold on with a Tarzan-like grip to keep it from her rivals come January.
There's a girl called Anoni Wood from Canberra who has been my teammate all year, and she's an exceptional talent who I think in the road race is going to be my main challenger.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
The Hunter has its passions, and one definitely has to be motor vehicles. Dubbed the car culture, it's about showing off your gleaming vehicle, or in some cases, spending time with those who also have the bug. However, sometimes that passion can go a bit too far. Welcome to the region's sin bin for burnout vehicles, a place where police can show who controls the road.
The Highway Patrol Police are vigilant in their efforts to try and curb young drivers and older drivers of spinning their wheels, and that's what a burnout is, spinning the wheels, losing traction of your tyres.
The Hunters Police Holding Yard has only recently reopened after refurbishment work, and there are now almost 30 impounded burnout vehicles here, with recent additions including this Nissan Urvan. Some are having an extended stay because of the expense of getting caught.
The fines are now around the $390 mark and 3 points off your licence. And of course, then the holding fee, $15 a day for 90 days, not negotiable.
And Newcastle Council is doing its bit to try and manage late-night car activity at Nobbies and Horseshoe Beaches. A new entry is being built at car parks in the area as part of the plan, with the northern exit of the Nobbies roundabout destined for closure. Gary Blair, NBN News.
This is how most of us remember the steelworks, a maze of large rusty buildings and structures with smoke and gases belching from blackened chimneys. And this is the site today, almost unrecognisable to the people who spent most of their lives working there.
We never shut, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and look at it now, it's not even a ghost town. I mean, there's just nothing there, mate, it's gone.
For the past 4 years, the site has still been producing steel, only it's all scrap. 2 concrete pads are all that remain of the giant gas holders, and the number 4 blast furnace is one of the last pieces of steel-making equipment to go.
The day after we all walked out and I went back to the security office for one day, I stayed, and the ghosts were there then. It looks worse now.
The site, with its deep water access, has been earmarked for a shipping container terminal. Meantime, the changing waterfront at Wickham has attracted an expensive visitor. Traffic was stopped on Hannell Street late yesterday as a 22-metre luxury speedboat was trucked into Noakes Boatyard. The $4 million craft will be unwrapped and launched after Christmas for its Sydney owner.
After a knee reconstruction, Steve Eagleton knows all about spending time at the physio. But in contrast to much of the past 9 months, today's visit was only to pick up injured teammate Damien Brown.
Weekend off, basically. Yeah, and unfortunately we've got 2 games this weekend, so that rules me out for both games.
Brown's injury comes on top of the forced withdrawals of Milan Blagojevic and Joe Wheelhouse. But after 9 months out of football, Eagleton answered his coach's SOS call.
I always joke about it and I say, Crookie, I'm ready to go. And when he found out about Brownie, he sort of questioned me how I was feeling. And straight away I just jumped at it and said, yeah, I'm ready to go.
It's been a frustrating time for Eagleton, who was scheduled to come back months ago before he was floored with an infection.
I've got no worries with the knee. The doctors have checked it out and said it's actually stronger than my other one, which it should be. It's just, I think, the other parts of the body that aren't used to the running.
Scott Thomas's return from suspension couldn't be more timely, given it's the ladder leaders they play tonight, while teenager Peter McPherson starts at the back as Newcastle prepare to stop South Melbourne's potent attacking weapons. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
While thousands of people in the Hunter will reflect on their spiritual beliefs this Christmas, Catholic Bishop Michael Malone says some people expect too much to occur.
Christmas is very much something of the heart in each of us, rather than an event that comes to us from outer space. You know, it's not like Superman or E.T. being born as a human being, but it's the presence of Jesus being born in the hearts of people, to move them to be more responsive to each other.
Anglican Bishop Roger Hurft says just like Rudolph the reindeer, many people can feel isolated at this time of year. He says it's our duty to reach out to others. And despite the tragedy of war or terrorism, we need to keep loving life.
We continue to battle and fight and kill each other. It's mad, isn't it? And we often think, well, how can God be in the midst of all of this? And yet the Bethlehem story tells us that here in this refugee camp, effectively, God's hope is born, and that we should never allow fear and cynicism to ultimately rule our lives, because that will be the end not only of ourselves, but of the world around us.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
The Lower Hunter Transport Working Group unveiled its final report today. Among the key points, cutting the rail line at Broadmeadow and replacing it with a free bus service into town funded by a levy on inner-city car parking. State rail land either side of the 4-kilometre rail corridor would be sold to developers for housing and office blocks, but the corridor itself would remain.
The government is committed to ensure that the transport corridor remains a transport corridor that will involve either regulation or legislation.
We have justified, I believe, beyond doubt that the rail corridor doesn't get used to the extent that people think that it's being used, and I see that we have better utilise our resources with buses.
Other recommendations include a revamp of bus routes in the Lower Hunter and local control of bus and ferry services.
Finally, we're seeing something positive happening about public transport in the Lower Hunter. For many years, long before I became Lord Mayor, but for many years, public transport has languished in this area.
Labor member for Newcastle Bryce Gaudry wasn't invited to the launch by the Minister, but crashed the press conference to have his say.
My view is that the heavy rail can be a backbone to that system. That is a view shared by many people in this area.
More reports will follow this one, with all the relevant government departments to prepare reports before a final report is endorsed.
That is the Premier's Department, the Department of Infrastructure and Planning, the Treasury and, of course, Transport, to assess the recommendations.
A decision on the fate of the rail line isn't expected until late next year at the earliest. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
While it might look like a Yuletide gathering, the situation outside P&H Mine Pro at Mount Thorley is more serious. 46 workers have been locked out of their workplace now for almost 6 weeks. They say for not accepting individual workplace agreements, and they've set up a picket. And it's having an effect on what should be a happy time of year.
Christmas is just not going to be the same with this year compared to what we've been having over the past years and everything.
I think it's a disgrace that we have to spend Christmas Day on the picket line, when Christmas Day should be a day to spend with the family.
Only yesterday, the Industrial Relations Commission informed the company, which primarily services and repairs mining equipment, it couldn't shut down the operations altogether without negotiating with workers. Those talks should take place between the 6th and 9th of January, where the representing unions will again call for a collective agreement. P&H Mine Pro declined to comment today. But with the support of charity organisations, nearby businesses, sections of the local community and other unions, the workers have found themselves anything but left out in the cold. And while Santa today met with their children, there's no mistaking what the workers want for Christmas.
All we're after is a fair and equitable EBA, and that's how we can go forward, not only the company but all ourselves as well.
Colin Robinson, NBN News.
It was a smooth touchdown for the 11 o'clock service that arrived at Belmont, a landing that belies the airline's bottom line. Like many regional airlines, times are tough. In Aero Pelican's case, it has asked Lake Macquarie Council to purchase the airport it paid $6 million for in April 2002. The problem is, Council wants to rezone the land from open space to infrastructure. Aero Pelican claims that will significantly diminish the land's value. The local Progress Association says Aero Pelican is a vital community service.
The greatest fear would be that if the airport closes and we can't find an alternative service provider, then council will resume the land and be forced to sell the land for housing because they won't want to have large borrowings and a debt over their head.
Aero Pelican took measures today, reassuring passengers the airline is still very much a going concern, providing passengers with a statement that it is still in the very early stages of negotiation with Council, adding there is no threat to the airline. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Another Christmas and another rush for seafood. The Commercial Fishermen's Co-op in Newcastle says the public's hunger for seafood is stronger than last year, and that was a record. It's little surprise to anyone that prawns again topped the list. Over at the Costi Seafood at Katara, they've shifted more than 2.5 tonnes of prawns in the last 2 days. Not surprisingly, they've been open since yesterday morning.
36 hours was amazing for us. They started coming about 3:45 this morning, and then it just come steady flow from then. And just kept going and going.
Other than prawns, lobsters and oysters were also high in demand, but perhaps not as popular as a pillow for a weary head tonight.
Mate, Santa ain't coming early tomorrow, I can tell you right now.
And it seems two interest rate rises haven't affected Christmas spending in the region.
We believe that we'll be up on last year. It's been very steady.
Whether it was last-minute gift shopping, the chance to finally meet Santa before his big night, or getting someone else to wrap a special gift for a special someone, all reports suggest this Christmas has been one of the most spirited yet. Colin Robinson, NBN News.
It was a bite from a snake like this which left an 8-year-old girl recovering in hospital, and her surgeon Ian White, a professor of clinical toxicology, says she was one of the lucky ones.
We ended up having to give the little girl 7 ampoules of antivenom because her blood was unclottable, and without it she would have died.
With summer well and truly here, Dr. White is a busy man indeed, responsible for the treatment of many snakebite victims, where the outcome could be much more positive for those who undergo simple first aid straight after the bite.
And that means putting a pressure bandage on, wrapping it from the site of the bite up the limb, up to the groin or up to the armpit if it's on the arm, at the sort of pressure you'd put on for a sprained ankle.
In the latest snakebite case, the young girl was wearing thongs, practical in some ways but hardly a barrier for an angry snake.
In areas where snakes are known to be, you should avoid going into the long grass and places where you think that the snakes are easy to hide, or the snakes find it easy to hide. And it's important to wear adequate and appropriate footwear, and that often means boots in those areas.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
At 5 for 112 on a damp track, you'd think it would be about preservation, but John Rowe was about attack first and ask questions later. Joined by Scott Jarvis, the Central Coast pair put on a quick-fire 78-run stand for the 6th wicket. Rowe carving up an entertaining 50. While Jarvis drove all the way to triple figures as King Cumber fought back to set Maitland 277 runs to win. Defending champions Merriweather had a nervous start against Canberra's top side Western Creek. Surviving one chance, Neil Crittenden didn't get past the next ball, gifting Mark Oliver the easiest of catches. 1 for 26, enter country captain Simon Moore. Coming off scoring 2 centuries last weekend, his eye was still in. Successive 4s off Dean Lovett pointed to a possible hat-trick of tons. But the Western Creek bowler had the last laugh on the very next delivery. Merriweather eventually reaching 244. If it wasn't for Josh Emerton, you'd wonder just how many Manning River would have made as it struggled to post a competitive score against Hamilton Wickham. Keeping things ticking over with an array of shots to reach 50, it wasn't overs that he had to worry about, it was partners. Todd Mitchell's spin snaring him 3 for 21 as the inaugural winners rolled Manning for 161 and looking on track for a second cup title. The pool wasn't a bad place to cool off given today's temperature and heated exchanges overnight, but it's the record of just 17 goals in 16 games that's getting the coach hot under the collar.
We're struggling away with 3 as our top scorer, and that's and to be fair, that's not good enough.
Marconi showed how it was done through young Socceroo and now Olyroos Alex Brosk, who made a clever run on the half hour to set up Brad Maloney for an easy finish. Goalkeeper Tom Willis made sure the margin didn't grow before the break. A range of puzzling decisions did little to ease frustrations. Ryan Griffiths booked for diving and he'll now miss the next match through suspension. Niggle quickly threatened to turn ugly. A Craig Dean's challenge ending with almost every player involved. After Scott Thomas's indiscretion, they were soon up close and personal again. Even keeper Tom Willis got involved, as referee Brett Hugo struggled to control either side. Ian Crook wasn't blaming the ref for the result though. He laid things squarely on his own players.
At the end of the day, you can't put the ball in the back of the net, then you don't win games.
Little separates those at the top of the ladder, but Newcastle continues to slip away from playoff contention. And some bad news today for Damien Brown. The defender's knee injury, worse than first thought. He'll now be sidelined for at least 6 weeks.
Port Stephens is known as the region's blue water wonderland, but that title has taken on a new meaning for the local oyster industry. Producers are wondering who's plundering their racks. Oyster farmer Robert Deemer is so frustrated by his losses, he's offering a personal reward to find the culprits.
Roughly about $25,000 so far this year. That's since last Christmas. And lately it's just started again. We've lost about $4,000 worth in the last few weeks.
Thieves have targeted oyster leases in the Tea Gardens Pindima area and Tilligary Creek. In addition to denying producers their livelihood and interrupting growth cycles, farmers are worried black market suppliers could pose a risk to consumers.
If somebody gets sick, genuinely sick from oysters, those oysters can be traced to the source. Seafood has all the details, particulars, everything. But if they're being stolen, there's no details on them whatsoever.
Port Stephens Water Police are conducting surveillance operations but also want public help because of the quantities involved.
So any very, very large barges or anything around the oyster leases, I would suggest people to report it to us.
Gary Blair, NBN News.